Hello, this is John Paval with Access Arts Live, giving you a heads up on a live stream event of 2025. Friday, February 7th, Opera Lafayette is live streaming free of charge a world premiere performance of Morgiane, the long-lost opera of African-American composer Edmond Dede. Like and repost this video to spread the good word. I don't often ask people to do that, but it isn't all that often you get an opportunity to discover and enjoy a full-length opera that you've never heard before. This opera is by Edmond Dede, and that's the music you're hearing in the background, if you can hear it. I don't know if I have it up loud enough for you. This was his first song, which was called Mon Pauvre Coeur, My Poor Heart, which was published in 1852. I'm going to tell you about him, but first I want to tell you about this terrific opera, which is absolutely an event that you want to enjoy. Yeah, it's a great thing socially, for social reasons, but it's also a great opera, and that's what I want to focus on with you to start off. Okay, this opera is it's a story of vengeance, truth, and reconciliation, and love and loss and recovery. It starts out when a young couple's wedding day is disrupted, and the bride is kidnapped by the agents of a sultan, the Sultan of Ispahan, and she's forced into an engagement with this sultan. The story comes straight out of Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves. It's an adventure story. But, then the bride's family, led by the mother, by the way, strikes out to seek revenge. And we're told there's a shocking revelation that comes to light, leading to a path of forgiveness. But I can't tell you what that is, or I'll ruin the ending for you. Okay? Let me show you a picture of the performers in this opera. They have a very nice equip of experienced African-American singers, opera singers, who are absolutely dedicated to this performance. I can tell you that. So we start out with Morgiane, who is played by Mary Elizabeth Williams, a soprano. She sung with the Opéra National de Paris, with the Santa Fe Opera, with the Seattle Opera. She started out as a spinto soprano with a repertoire like Tosca, Aida, Leonora in Il Trovatore. But more recently, she's added coloratura roles like Abigail in Nabucco, Lady Macbeth, and Norma. And recently, she played Isolde in Tristan und Isolde at the Seattle Opera and in Peter Sellers's production of the same piece at the Opéra National de Paris. So she's a voice you may want to hear in a leading role here. Next up is the guy playing the Sultan Kuru Shah, played by Kenneth Kellogg, with bass. And Kenneth has been with the Chicago Lyric Opera, the San Francisco Opera, the Washington National Opera, done a lot of work out on the West Coast. He's involved in doing a lot of things these days. His title roles that he sings are Don Giovanni, Mephistopheles in Gounod's Faust, Don Alfonso in Così fan tutte, the title role in Handel's Hercules. You're kind of hearing a tendency toward period music there, and this is kind of a period piece. Tazewell Thompson composed the opera Blue for Kenneth Kellogg to perform, which he did, and it was named the best new opera of 2020 by the Music Critics Association of North America. So third up, playing Hagi Hassan is Joshua Conyers, baritone. He's sung with the New York Met, with the English National Opera, with the New York Phil in concerts. And he's currently on the voice faculty of the Eastman School of Music. I can't give you details about all the rest of the cast, but I can just tell you a little. In the role of Ali is Chauncey Packard, the tenor. He's sung with the New York Met, the Teatro Regio, the Opera Comique in Paris. Nicole Cabell, soprano, in the role of Amine. She sung with the Met, with the Royal Opera House, with the Cardiff Singers of the World. Bayhair is played by Jonathan Woody, a bass baritone, and his experience is mostly early music stuff, the Boston Early Music Festival, the Carmel Bach Festival. And Taylor White, the soprano, is basically a New Orleans singer, but she's only going to be singing in New Orleans versions of that. So the conductor is Patrick Dupre Quigley, if I got his name right. Yeah. And does he know the music? Well, here, let me tell you a little bit about the score for this opera. Here's an example. The score for this opera is 500 pages, handwritten. There you see the first page and one of the sample pages. And the thing is that these 500 pages had specific notations for each instrument in the orchestra, and the libretto was separate. So Quigley spent several years during the COVID period of time when everybody was stuck indoors, working with people from the New Orleans group Opera Creole, putting it back together, putting note by note, word by word, the entire libretto and the score together, so it could actually be performed, as sheet music. And there were some instruments, we're told, that were in the instrumentation which are no longer in use, and also they want to take into account the different sound of 19th century strings, for instance, compared to 21st century strings. So they're going to use period instruments or modern ones that have been adapted to make similar sounds. So this is a whole thing. Now, the thing you want to know is that the Opera Lafayette, they are specialists in period music of different kinds, and they have a regular season every year. They've been going on for some time, performing both in DC and in New York City. And they work together with Opera Creole, which is based in New Orleans, which specializes in recovering lost manuscripts from the heyday of New Orleans music scene back in the 19th century. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. It's not a coincidence that Edmond Dede, who came from New Orleans, wrote an opera, and he wrote more than one. He wrote a number of them. Edmond Dede was born in New Orleans, and now I'll talk about Edmond Dede, if you'll permit me. And perhaps I can just put him up on the screen so you can contemplate the man while I'm talking about it. There's Edmond Dede in a black and white photograph, which has been colorized, so you can get a better idea of him. Born 1827, about the same time as Brahms, I think, and lived until 1901, but the end was not so glorious. Anyway, he's born into a fourth generation family, people of color in New Orleans. They were originally, though, they had come from Haiti, but they were originally from the French Antilles, les Antilles, as the French call it. So it's not a surprise he ended up later on back in France. Even as a young man, he learned, when he was first learning to play the violin, he was considered a prodigy. But as he was growing up in New Orleans, well, there were the black minority in New Orleans was so large that you really couldn't practice segregation. So back in the 30s and 40s, the black community was thriving there, but some of the opportunities were limited. Now, what there was for musicians, there was a huge thriving opera scene. There were at least 4 opera houses in New Orleans in the 1830s and 40s and 50s, doing over 200 productions a year. Italian composers like Bellini and Rossini staged their American premieres at theaters in the city's French Quarter. But as time moved into the 1840s and 50s, the division in the U.S. and the increasing segregation in the South made life less and less comfortable. In 1848, after the Mexican War, Dede went to Mexico for a couple of years to make a living there, also working in the cigar business, cigar making. Came back to New Orleans in 1851, tried to make a go of it in that scene. And finally, in 1855 or 56, he had saved up enough money and he went to Paris. And he couldn't get into the Paris Conservatory because he was too old. He was already 29 years old. And they only took people until they were 22. And I will tell you, I ran into some trouble with some Parisian music schools like that myself. Due to age restrictions, but let's not dwell on me. Anyway, they did let him audit classes though, and he studied both the violin and composition and conducting while he was at it, studying with Fromental à Lévis and Jean Delphin Allard. Then, after a few years of that, in 1860, he went down to Bourges, where he was the chief conductor at a theater, and from there he went to Bordeaux, which was a bigger town, and became the rehearsal pianist and an assistant conductor for the ballet orchestra at the Grand Theatre, Le Grand Théâtre. And I can show you a picture of the Grand Théâtre to just bring this even more to life for you. There's a picture. It is a grand structure. I mean, it was a big deal. You got to understand that during periods like this, 1830s, 40s, 50s, 60s, there was no film, there was no television, for those of you who aren't aware of it. But so theater or you know, staged productions, they were everything. If you wanted entertainment on an evening or on the weekend, they were your only choices. So people swarmed to them when they were any good. And all these different levels, from the high opera down to and theater down to operetta, and then down to more musical shows and things. So then he also got by 1865, he had made enough connections and impressed people enough that he got himself appointed as the director of and chief conductor of a theater, the Alcazar Theater. Which I show you a picture of right there. And he stayed there for a couple of decades at least. French sources say 27 years, but that doesn't add up with other things about the timeline of his life. Okay. So then later towards the late 70s, early 80s, he went to work at the Folies Bordelaise, the Bordeaux, like the Follies, the Bordeaux Follies, which was much more vulgar than these other places had been. I mean, they had to have guards there, and people got drunk and got in fights and stuff like that. And if you know the movie The 39 Steps, there's a music hall. There are a couple of music hall scenes there, and during one of them, people start getting involved in fist fights and everything. And the MC comes out and makes an announcement. He says, "Gentlemen, you are not at home." But anyway, that's a little bit like what the Folies Bordelaise was like. Anyway, during these 30 years or so that he was active, he produced 150 dances, 95 songs, 6 string quartets, 6 operas, 6 operettas, comic opera, symphonies, 2 choral works, Chora la Bordelaise, which means the Chora from Bordeaux, and Françoise et Tortillade, and ballet music for Nenaha, Reine des Fées, Nenaha, the Queen of the Fairies, and La Sensitive, the sensitive one. His first published song was the one that I was playing for you earlier in this. For your agency, coaching or consulting business. Earlier in this, and I've got another piece I can play for you now. Here's another one. This is a lovely piece. One of his symphonies was called Quasimodo Symphony, was first performed in 1865 in New Orleans, conducted by an African-American conductor, Samuel Snayer, to an audience which was free people of color and northern whites. It was very popular. But as the France moved into the 1880s, operetta became less popular and gave way to vaudeville. And what Edmond Dede did was not really vaudeville, and it didn't work out for him. Now, in 1887, he completes the score for Morgiane, but he couldn't find a theater that would do it in Bordeaux. Now, he had gotten married back in 1864, and his son by now was grown up, working as a conductor and a composer in Paris. So Edmond Dede moved up to Paris to live with his son. Around 1890, he went to New Orleans and gave several concerts there, maybe trying to get Morgiane put on there. It didn't work out. Moved back to France to live with his son, and lived in obscurity in the last decade of his life, and died in 1901, and was buried in a communal grave, and there's no marker. So a sad ending. On a lighter note, he was recognized on November 20th, 2021 by Google, and they gave him a doodle, all his own. So people are starting to rediscover the man, and I hope that you will too, for this live stream, which is going on tomorrow. I think this is music that I don't think you want to miss. This is a composer that I think you want to know, this is what live streaming allows you to do. Instead of having to pay $40 or $50 or euros to see this newly rediscovered work, you get it free of charge. Friday night at, let me make sure I have the time right for you. It'll be at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, 4 in the afternoon.
What are the best investments if you live abroad in Europe?
Okay, so you're in
4 in the afternoon on the West Coast, 1 in the morning, Central European time. Absolutely worth staying up for. I will be staying up to watch it. I guarantee you that. And 11 o'clock in the morning, Saturday morning, Australian Eastern Daylight Time. We will recirculate this live stream that I'm doing now to all the opera loving groups that we are a part of on Facebook. But I really encourage you, and I never do this with people, I encourage you, repost this live stream. I will do a very brief reel that's like 20 seconds, but that's not going to help people at all. But if you repost it, more and more people will know about it, and as many people as possible deserve to know about this one. Otherwise, we'd love it if you would like this video. If you're watching on Facebook, then we'll send you an invite to follow us. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe by clicking on the subscribe button below. If you're watching us on our other platforms, please don't just like the video, like us. Follow us in our page on X, TikTok, Instagram, and Threads. Folks, it's a great event coming up tomorrow. I hope you'll all tune in and come back to any of our pages and let us know what you thought of this long-lost opera by a composer whom you probably have never heard of, but he was a terrific guy, had a tremendous output, was obviously very talented, and were the circumstances and history of race and racism different, well, this might be a household name for you instead of someone you're just discovering. So let's see what we can do to make it a household name again, and repost this video to as many people as you can. Ciao for now, and thanks for tuning in.